Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
Back at you in Gloves Off, and I'm Paul Buitrón, and today we have a great guest, a producer, a person that is in the forefront of something called parental alienation, and she has made many documentaries, and a great one, and interviewed many folks about the subject. And she's probably the leader of this type of child abuse, if you can say that. Dr. Petra, how are we doing?
Oh, thank you so much, Prof. Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to be back on your show and share.
No, it's always good to see, and it's something that it continues, and I think we need to let the people know that parental alienation exists, the different forms of parental alienation. I think a lot of people are complacent in a situation where it's been going on with them for such a long time that they do not know what to do. And I think that's the problem. This is something that affects everybody, and more especially our children, correct? But tell us a little bit about what it is for the audience that's just coming in.
So for people that are not familiar with parental alienation is what happens when one parent or someone, it could be a step parent or someone else, influences the child to reject the relationship with the other parent for no good reason. So saying things like, your mom doesn't care about you, your dad is an alcoholic, your mom cheated on me, or your dad doesn't pay child support. But obviously, like you're right, it comes in a whole spectrum of things. So sometimes people think that parental alienation is about interfering, like physically preventing the child from going to your house during your visitation time. But there's actually a whole range of it, and the behavior sometimes is very subtle, but very malicious. So, including things like, I heard one of the father that talk about, it was his time, it was his weekend to have his son, and the mother invited the son's best friend to go to Disneyland and said, hey, we're going to go to Disneyland this weekend if you want to go with us. Well, now the son is like, Dad, can I go to Disneyland with mom? Because my best friend's going with mom. And so obviously now you're putting dad in a difficult position because that's his time to have his son. But mom has planned this supposedly amazing experience with his friends. And so now, dad is caught in the middle, because if he say no, he's a bad guy, right? Because the child, refusing to allow the child to have this great time. And if he say yes, now he lose time with the son. So really sometimes it's very subtle, but it's very malicious. And I mean, you and I had this discussion about things like, and you've seen this with your academy, where you have, maybe one of the parents signing up the child for a particular class and pay for it, like martial art classes. It could be swimming, it could be, some kind of curriculum, like extracurriculum activities, it could be painting, art classes, things like that. And then the other parents just won't take them, just there's different things that they go in, and I mean, we can talk more about it, but really, yeah, it can be very subtle.
You brought up a good point, and a lot of people don't know, or those that do know, I do have a martial arts school, and I've had it for a very long time, and we've been open for 30 years now. And what happens is that we've seen way too many kids come in. Some kids were from parents that were divorced, some kids, and usually what happens in the last, I would say, 15 years, I've been paying more attention to it. Usually what happens is the father calls me and he says, I want my child to learn.
Yeah.
And he comes in, brings the child in, And he goes, yeah, but he's with his mom. So his mom's going to bring him.
Yeah.
So the mom never brings him, or bring him a couple of times or one or twice per month. Really nothing for the child to learn anything, really. And the father is paying for it. And the mom's telling him, I'm really not going to take him. It's you're the one that put him there. And then he goes, well, then let me take him with one of them. And the mom says, you can't take him. It's not your time. So I'm not going to take him to class. And he came back and he says, what do I do about this? And you're like, you're stuck in the middle, because you see these parents that are struggling with paying for classes, and the other parents not doing it just for spite. More than
And yeah, and may I add that sometimes, and a lot of the time actually, they agree upfront. So, at the beginning, the dad have talked to the mom and said, hey, let's put, our son into this martial art class or whatever. And the mother agree upfront. And then, like you said, maybe take the child one or two times. And then, meanwhile, the father is paying for it, and then nothing. Yeah.
Right.
There's definitely, yeah.
Yep.
It's, I know of a situation, for example, in acting, right? So, one of the hallmark for becoming a professional actor is becoming a member of SAG-AFTRA, is the Screen Actor Guild Union, right? So if you, it's very difficult to join, and to join, it costs a lot of money. It's several $1,000s, and it's difficult to join. But once you join, you sort of consider somewhat more professional level, and you can actually get jobs that are professional job, not just, silly acting jobs. And I know of a case where, the parents talk to each other and agree that, okay, the child is going to, so the mother asks the father, can our daughters go into serious acting? The daughter expressed genuine interest. And the father said, okay, that's fine. And the mother said, would you allow the children to go to audition and go to acting? And he said, sure, no problem. And the summer's coming up. There was going to be 3 months of summer, and there can be a lot of time for the kid to do acting because there's no school. And the father says, that's fine, but as long as you pay for the joining fee, which is several $1,000, as long as you pay for it. So, the mother pay for it, and the mother pay for headshot. With actors, you have to have headshot. Again, it costs a bunch of money. And then after all of that, once it's done, the father said, I changed my mind. I'm not going to allow the kids to, not only I'm not going to allow the kids to go acting during my time, but also if you intend to take the kids to acting during your time, I am going to file a lawsuit against you. I'm going to take you to court. And I'm going to find reason to argue that acting is not good for children. And so, yeah, there's that kind of things, and that's the thing, is that parents, when they're being put in a place like that, they get caught in the middle, because they get stuck, because they have no way of, what can you do in that situation? And you spend a bunch of money, and the other side agreed, and then now they change their mind, and then the parents sometimes actually question themselves, like am I being difficult? Am I being unreasonable here? They don't even see, because they are so used to this form of manipulation and just backstabbing and all that kind of things. They don't even recognize how wrong it is.
Right. No, you're absolutely correct. And I've seen, especially with the school and issues like that, like what you're mentioning. And it's very hard, because what happens if one says yes? What happens if one says no? And the whole 9 yards. And I've seen it go the other way as well. I've seen mothers bring in their child into the school, and the father doesn't want him to come to the school, wants him to go to another school because his brother's there or something. You know what I'm saying? And she has the child enrolled here, and all of a sudden they stop paying because the father wants him to go somewhere else. And understand? So it's a very hard thing, especially for children, because of the whatever actions the parents are taking.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that's pretty bad. I mean, I'm and another form that I hear a lot about is that when they're with you, everything's fine. Because I know many parents, many fathers or mothers have bought their children's phones for them to be in communication with them, whether FaceTime or what have you. And they even go and get it into the court that they have a certain amount of time to talk to them per day, which is fine. And when your hour comes to talk to them per day, well, guess what? Their phone didn't work. Their phone's not working. Oh, they're not here. They're doing something else. And it goes on every day after month and becomes year after year. And eventually, people tire out. That's another form I would say was of an alienating your child. But it's one of those forms that people say, well, yeah, but maybe the phone didn't ran out of battery. Understand? I don't know. How would you say that is?
Right, of course, because that's interfering with communication. There's a balance. So on one hand, there are alienators that will try to interfere by calling constantly, and then when they're on the phone with the child, they will brainwashing the child while the child is with the targeted parent. And they would constantly calling all day long and many times during the day and demanding separate time with the child and things like that while the child is supposed to be with the other parent. So that's extreme. And then there's another extreme where the alienator, on the other hand, when it's the turn for the targeted parent to be able to call the child or communicate with the child in some way or text the child even, they block that communication. That is interfering with that relationship. So for sure, that is a form of parental alienation, because parental alienation is really to do with anything that they may have done that interferes that relationship. So there's a natural relationship that should be able to blossom because of the parent-child relationship. If you just leave that alone, sometimes it doesn't blossom, but whatever it is, it has its own natural way of growing. And now instead of it being the way it is, someone else is interfering by all sort of things. And so some of it is like we said, and sometimes it's by saying things like, yeah, I think you're allergic to mold, and our house doesn't have mold. So it's hinting that the other house has mold. And then the child starts to go and saying things, like my dad's house has mold or my mom's house has mold, things like that, just a lot of different way of creating a sense that the other parent is either not safe in some way or not available in some way. I've seen cases, for example, where they would say, like the father said to the child, yeah, your mother is going to come and pick you up she's supposed to pick you up in at 3 o'clock or something, but it's not the day for mother to pick the child up. So the child get dressed and waited and the mother never turned up. And then the father said, oh, see, she doesn't even care about you. She didn't turn up. She forget about you. She doesn't want you to be with her, so create things like that, it's crazy.
You're absolutely correct. The foolishness that comes out and the harm that is done to kids, it's beyond belief. And hopefully more lawyers, hopefully more judges understand this and start punishing those that are actually doing the alienating. Because right now, parental alienation is what it's seen, especially in the courts here in Texas. They really don't seem to think that it exists. It's kind of like, maybe, yeah, yeah, I've heard the word, but yeah, really, it really doesn't pertain here.
It has always been very challenging for parents to be able to fight parental alienation in court, because it's very, very complex. Because one, like you said, is that there's a lack of recognition in the law that parental alienation is a form of child abuse and domestic violence. So there's a lack of recognition that's written in the law as itself. So that's already make it difficult. And then you go to court, Sometimes you have a judge that may understand, sometimes you have a judge that doesn't understand. So that's another challenge. And then another challenge is that a lot of the time, alienators, like our situation, are some of the things that we talk about. For example, the case where it's the father or the mother's time to have the child, and then the other parent will plan an amazing activities that make the kids like wanting to go. And then if the father or the parent that's supposed to have the child say no, then you're the bad guy, right? So now it's like, well, I didn't do anything, right? It's the child that feel upset at you. You didn't allow him or her to go. I didn't demand the child to go with me. I didn't ask you for that time. It's the child that asked. He did it himself. He asked you himself. It wasn't me, right? And you say no to him. Oh, that's your problem. You know, so now you got into that situation where the alienators will blame the child. You know, no, I didn't do anything, right? So there's that situation. And then there's another situation that a lot worse, which is false allegation, which is also very common in parental alienation, where, you know, you haven't done anything wrong, and yet the other parent claimed that you beat the child up, or you didn't feed the children completely hungry and no food and no clothes, or even worse, you sexually molested the child. Things that just outrageous, things like that. So yeah, I mean, I've seen case where, you know, a parent that was accused of sexually molested a child on the day that the parent was actually out of town. The child was actually with the grandmother, you know, and yet he was accused of molesting his daughter. You know, just things like that. And when you go to court, when the judge is being thrown a bundle of things, right? You know, oh, you know, this is the child preference. You know, the child prefer to go with me, and oh, he's abusive to the child, and she's abusive to the child, things like that. And, you know, she doesn't even care about the child. She neglected the child. Things like, so you got this whole bundle of things that you expect the judge to not only understand the principle of parental alienation, but being able to see the subtlety of the case specific and looking at all these like both side throwing, you know, arguments, and then trying to figure out who is right, and then giving the quota that the judges have. Like they have tons of cases that they, you know, their dockets is just crazy. So now, you know, you become a very complex situation. And then not only is that, you know, like you might go and fight, and you try to, and before you can fight parental alienation, you have to fight the false allegation and say, no, I didn't do it, you know. And a lot of the time, you know, there's no proof, because this is what happened behind the closed doors. The child may be too young to be able to know or say anything, and there's nobody else to witness that. So now you're like, how do you fight something like that? Because you don't have proof to show anything. The only thing you could say is, no, I didn't do it, right? So it's your word against the other person would. So you got all that situation. So you have to fight that. And then before you could actually even fight parental alienation. And so it becomes, and then let's say you win that case, or win is not even the right term. You successfully defended yourself. It doesn't stop the other person to go back to court and came up with another false allegation the next day, and then the next day, and the next day. And each of these court cases takes a long time, sometimes years, and especially with COVID, things are a lot worse. You know, things take so long. So during that time, now you lost the child, and the other parent went around and, you know, badmouth and mudsliding, and you know, talking to everyone. Oh, he abusive to the child, and in front of the child. So now the child's listening to these stories, you know,
and believing it. Like, wait a minute, you know, mom's saying it's believable. Yes, I've seen that. And it's, I guess what we need to do is kind of put a light to that all these problems exist, and for people to be able to recognize them. So I think a lot of people are going through it, and they're just kind of like looking at it and they're saying like, you know, that she did this to me, and they don't know what to do. Or she said, you know what, she's not going to take the kids to class because I'm paying for it, and she's just not going to take them. Understand what I'm saying? So that's malicious, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And when you do something like this, and they both knew about it, that they both were going to be there, it's a total different entity. and you have parents that are that way, and I guess people in the spectrum of the parental alienation, I think everybody needs to say, well, here it happens so much. This is a type of alienation. They don't allow you to talk on the phone. They plan on your weekends. They don't let you see them. You know what I'm saying? And the severity of it, I don't know if there's something like that written out or it's already in a type of.
So there's a 5-factor model to prove parental alienation. So this is the challenge. A lot of parents, like you said, don't even know that they are victims of parental alienation. So there are tools out there that they don't even know to look for it, to get it, to use. And so that's one of the biggest problem. Because by the time that they realize it, it's already too late. It's like way deep into it. So that's actually the biggest challenge. But once they figure out that this is parental alienation, and for parents who are, self-aware and, like to self-educate and learn to pick up skill set and things like that, there's a lot of resources and a lot of information and the tools out there. So for example, there's a tool called the 5-factor model this is a forensic diagnostic tool to determine parental alienation. And so one of the factors is alienating behaviors, like you said, and it listed at least 17 categories of behaviors, including, like you said, keeping the child away or, saying bad things about the other parent. And so, there's a list there that you can check off. And then that way, and then also there's a list of the child behavior. So, when the child putting you down and things like that. So that's another factor in that model. So I actually have a workbook. It's on Amazon. You can like for parents, you can get it. I think, it's on Amazon. You can search for it. It's called the 5-factor model. I think it's called Diagnosing Parental Alienation, the 5-factor model workbook. And it's a tool out there for you guys to use. There's these forms and you can just fill in and you can check the boxes and try to see, are these the behaviors that you're seeing, and does this fit this model? And if it is, then if you are a victim of parental alienation. And also it helps you to structure your case when you go and present it to the judge. Like you said, because the workbook is that's our tool for parents to work on it, is to fill out your situation, very specific, and then that way it helps you lay out it in a structured way so that when you go to court, whether you use the term parental alienation or not is up to you. But the way it's structured is that it's clear enough that even if you don't use the term parental alienation, the other person, when they listen to the way you present your case, they still can tell that, oh, this is wrong. Something is very wrong here and this needs to be fixed. So that's the point of that workbook. So there are tools out there, but something like that, yeah.
Absolutely. If you can later on, email me your the link to that on Amazon, and I'll put it on the link below here, so parents and folks that are interested can actually get one.
Thank you.
We'll share the link because I think that is needed. Once more, I want to thank you for all your work. And with holidays coming up, we're going to see the alienation. Some of them are going to see the severity of you're not going to see your child even if it's on your holiday.
It's very true, yeah. So holidays are a really hard time in multiple ways. One is that it tends to increase custody interference. Custody interference is like we talk about, trying to prevent the other parent from having their children or interfering in some way. But not only that, there are parents that have lost the children, sort of like completely not being able to have the children at all during the holidays. And the thing about holidays is that it's such a special time, right? It's time where you're supposed to rejoin and build memories with your loved ones. And a lot of parents, when they don't get to have their children, it's really hard. It's heartbreaking. So I just wanted to say something about that, about coping with the holidays, is that instead of facing the holidays with that sense of dread and that sense of helplessness and hopelessness, instead of that, like approaching the holidays with a sense of gratitude, to appreciate, what you have had and appreciate your role as a parent and the magic that you have to your children. And then the other aspect of it is looking at So, when you deal with something challenging like this, obviously there's different ways of dealing with it, right? There could be, you could either deal with it like, just depressed and, giving up everything, and you don't want to continue with your life. You don't want to enjoy life. You eat junk food, you don't interact with people, you're grumpy all the time, right? You could do that. Or you could, like as if and I see this analysis in sport culture. Like, let's say if you hurt your arm, your right arm, you don't just stop training altogether. You don't just start to go and eat junk food and drink alcohol and hang out and do nothing. If you hurt your right arm, you leave that there, but you still trying to train the best you can. Like if you are an athlete, or if you are if you sporty in some way, or you're trying to be healthy, you continue to eat healthy, you continue to go and train your left arm and the rest of your body, and you're trying to protect this, you're trying to heal this as the best as you can, but you don't stop living, right? You don't stop healing, you don't stop training, you don't stop building yourself. So the same with life, and the same with losing your children during the holidays. It's the same thing. You don't stop living, you still continue to build the best life possible, because guess what? If you are not well, if you're not training yourself, and I'm talking mentally, then when your children, if there's any chance of you getting your children back, you're not going to be ready to have your children back. You're going to be this broken parent. So you won't be ready to have your children. So the best thing you can do is, like trying to heal that broken heart as much as you can. But in the meanwhile, build the rest of yourself, so that hopefully you can help yourself fight for your children and heal yourself.
You're exactly right. And I think the hardest part within alienation, or while you're being alienated, is that you're seeing your children being taken away. It's like if a loss of a child, you're seeing taken away, and you can't mourn because they're still alive.
Yeah.
You're kind of you're droopy, going around sad and all this other stuff, but you can't really figure out why. So I think that if people start understanding that the word parental alienation is associated to these behaviors, I think that things will change for the better. Because there's a lot of wrongs going on, and everybody kind of just shushes, just goes into their own corner instead of going out there and actually defending to make sure that your children are fine and to be with you. And it takes a different kind of person to do that. Not everybody that's gone through a divorce is going to stand up and fight for their children.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. Mourning for a child that's still alive is a very tough. Yeah. You have no closure. You have and the pain is unbearable. It's definitely tough.
Absolutely. So, Doctor, I want to thank you once more. You're always awakening us with different viewpoints of how to see parental alienation. And please send me the link to the Amazon for me to put it in the description below. That is needed, especially for those people that are being alienated. Okay.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Until next time, much peace. And if I don't see you, you have a blessed Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.